Okay, good evening and welcome to today's The Double 15 Minutes, the 18th of October, 8 p.m. And I'm not sure how many people are joining us live at the moment, but if you are watching live, please put your comments in the comments section. Let us know which platform you're watching us from, because we are streaming live across Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Any questions you've got to ask, please, again, put them in the comments and we'll do our best to ask them. So today, I'm going to go straight into the show because we have got a lot to talk about. And I've got two amazing warrior queens with me today. We've got Jayshree Adnath as well as Clare Walker. Now, we're talking about coercive control. Now, I know over the last few months and a few shows I've done, we've spoken about domestic abuse, physical abuse, and the repercussions and the harm it can do. However, the things that aren't really spoken about are the things that are hidden behind closed doors more than physical abuse, and that is coercive control. Now, what is so ominous about coercive control is that this level of abuse goes on and it can start as early as childhood. You're conditioned to accept it as early as childhood, but it goes on behind closed doors, and the psychological impact, the impact on your mental health, the impact on your whole way of being can be seriously impacted to the point where you are pushed into a deep depression, potential suicidal ideation, and in some cases, psychosis. So I did say earlier, my two guests, Clare Walker of Clare Walker Consulting, who works very closely with a number of organisations, including governments, including police organisations, to try and find solutions for, I suppose, the pandemic that we're dealing with, which is domestic abuse. And Jayshree Adnath, who has very kindly joined us to share her story of surviving domestic abuse and more so coercive control. So Clare and Jayshree, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, before we go any further, Clare, I'm just going to ask you a question with regards to the facts and figures when we're talking about coercive control, as well as domestic abuse. Is this something that tends to happen more of men against women or women against men? Is it equal numbers, or do we find that it sort of sways against one gender over the other?
Unfortunately for women, it does sway against females the world over, more so, which is why I refer to it as the original pandemic. It does occur in same-sex relations and with a male victim and a female perpetrator. But because of the constructs of society that we share globally, i.e. patriarchy, which is underpinned by misogyny, then it's an easier step to take for a male to be abusive to a female and all the gender stereotypes and everything else around that.
So, I mean, going on to you, Jayshree, I mean, like with coercive control, because it's a term that a lot of people may not necessarily be familiar with. So, could you just give a little bit more of an explanation of what we actually mean by coercive control?
For me, coercive control was about controlling every aspect of your life. And before I got to that stage, I had to be educated as well in order to get the correct terms so that I could express myself. That's the main difficulty. We have people coming from my culture because we don't have the words to describe coercive control. And for me, it was like an education first, and then I could relate and share what I've been through. And it is something that's been so normalized in our culture that we will not even think about it by being coercive control. We'll kind of take it to be, oh, someone is caring, is very protective and looking after us. So it's a very insidious way of controlling someone.
Yeah, and we had a little chat earlier. We obviously with the both of you, and one of the things that sort of came out was the fact that coercive control, like I said earlier, could potentially start as early as childhood, especially when we're living within a very patriarchal community, whether that is the Asian community or an other. Jayshree, what was your experience of coercive control? Can you just tell us a little bit more about what it is that you actually suffered and what you went through?
He controlled me right from the very beginning. And there's some stages that's described in the Freedom Program, which I attended, called love bombing. Basically, it's someone who rushes you before you really get to know the person. So the first flag would be like you're rushing to a relationship. And then what you eat, what you wear, who you associate with, primarily his friends and family. And when I was working, he took 90% of my salary. And then he was the one who controlled the finances, when to go out, where to go out, always on his terms, and always do what he wanted me to do. And he deliberately isolated me from everyone without me realizing he never really liked my family. And then started name calling. And that's where the insidious control begins. Like name calling me in a teasing way, then continuing into front of his friends and family, and then in a very degrading way, with him always trying to look as if he's funny and he's just joking. And it was always a joke. All the put downs was always a joke. And then he humiliated me, and I couldn't talk back. And that's the thing, when you're surviving, you tend to choose the least how do I say, which can lead to even more abuse. So you tend to sort of rein yourself in, bow your head in shame, and then look away. Because if I dared confront him or challenge him, I know there's going to be repercussion in another way when I'm alone with him. And yes, sorry.
No, sorry, please forgive me. I was going to ask you a question on that. When you said repercussions in another way, what do you mean? Are we talking physical abuse, or would there be even more mental, psychological abuse?
For me, it was more mental, psychological, emotional abuse, because for me, it was something we do hear about domestic abuse, domestic violence, or if someone is having an affair. With me, it was a totally different experience, because he was a closet gay person, and he used me to be like his cover. And he did that in such an insidious way that no one believed me when I was trying to tell everyone that he was gay. Everyone blamed me, and that no, he doesn't behave like, he's such a nice guy. You're wrong. But then it was so difficult, because then I kept asking, where's your proof that he's gay? And how do you gather proof? And it took me 3 years to gather evidence against him to prove that he was grooming young African boys, or early late teens for sex. So for me, it had another level of control and manipulation that I never saw coming. And when someone has this kind of very kind, charming, which is very typical of narcissist person, you never even sort of suspect that he was in that way. So that was another thing. There was this humiliation, and then you realize that your whole life, married life with him, has been a lie right from the beginning. There was no real love, nothing. It was just about using and abusing me. And then the damage that's been caused to my psyche, about trusting, and I couldn't describe it. So when my GP sat me down and then referred me to Clare, that's when I started going. And then it was like a light bulb has sort of, I said, yes, this is exactly what I'm going through, what I've been through. But I didn't have a language to express myself when I was going through that. Because I don't think many, I'm sure there must be, but because of the thing about family honor and the shame, and which is really very ironic because it's always abused women who are, always get blamed. How could I be blamed for him being gay? And then you suffer the social humiliation, and then people use that and say, oh, why did you marry a gay man? I said, how would I know if he was gay or not? So for me, it had like an additional level of abuse as well.
So this is the thing that sort of like that I've been sort of like trying to get my head around, is the whole mentality, and I'm sure you both have as well with the work that you do. And Claire, please sort of like I'm going to direct a couple of questions at you shortly. But the whole victim blaming mentality. So if we look at, the Sarah Everard murder, the Sabina Nasso murder, immediately there were so many posts telling women how they must behave going forward to avoid being raped, murdered, attacked. And it seems to be that victim blaming is rife across every community. So I'm going to come back to you in a minute. So we've had Shahina Sheikh joining us. She's saying hi everyone. Colette Byrne has joined us and she's saying, Jayshree, what a strong lady. I hear you. Keep going, keep healing, recovering from this trauma. And she's also said, exactly, you didn't have a crystal ball, the beauty of hindsight. And this is the thing, Claire. So coming back to you, Claire, there's been a lot of victim blaming that goes on across sort of like, domestic abuse victims, rape victims, victims of coercive control. How do you, as a consultant, as a safe space, how do you help the people that come to you understand that they are the victims and not the perpetrators?
Well, it's a journey really for everybody going through that process, because all of the things that Jayshree's just explained about how it made her feel and how she was told to feel keeps it all enclosed. So the coercive control dismantles us from the inside out. So therefore we're more malleable in the first place. And then we've got our family or our community saying, if it's not working, it's my fault. And therefore I feel guilt. And then there's I can't leave because this is not our culture to leave. So then there's the shame, which just wraps it all up beautifully in silence. So as a victim, nobody's been aware of this. And then when I start talking about it, it makes people feel uncomfortable. So it's far easier to say, well, they never said anything before, so it seems a little bit rich. The guy that she's talking about seems like a really nice guy, always charming and suave, generally speaking. And so it's just the reframing work that you have to do when victims are scratching their heads and saying, no, it was my fault, actually, X, Y, Z, is just saying to them, did you ask? Did you ask to be abused? Did you ask to be silenced, to be restricted, isolated, humiliated? Did you ask for any of those things? Because there's no point me telling a new person, especially coming into the service who doesn't know me, and they'll be sitting there thinking, well, she don't know me. So I can't say what your experience is, but I can give you some words and tools that will help you map the picture of your experience. So it's just reframing it. Did you ask for that? No. But society does blame because of sorry to come back to it, but the patriarchy. Because if we're in an equality structure, even with all of our collective cultures of practice, there would still be a baseline of equality. And so then it's like, well, let's have a look at this guy. What's this guy been doing in this situation? But because it's, females are vexatious, hormonal, and, menstrual sometimes, all of that all sits in the misogyny that underpins it. And so it's just a natural assumption. What was she doing? What did she do? What should she have stopped doing? All of those things. So that's why we have victim blaming at the rate that we do.
No, absolutely. And it's going back to what we'd said right at the beginning, is that a lot of the time the coercive control is embedded into a lot of us from childhood, because the different roles we're actually, that are portrayed by everybody around us, TV, media, and our own families. Man, breadwinner. Man is masculine. Man is, the ruler of his kingdom. Yeah. Woman in the kitchen, cooking, cleaning, raising children, subservient, doesn't know enough about finances. And so we're raised with that mentality, or maybe a certain generation have been raised with that mentality. And unfortunately, a younger generation within certain cultures are still being raised with that mentality. And so when you have got that patriarchal structure, the misogynistic patriarchal structure, you automatically do start sort of like thinking, well, actually, no, it must be me. And, you blame yourself, because actually, how many safe spaces are there for victims, for people who have been, like Jayshree was a victim of coercive control, manipulation, and downright horrible, horrific lies. She was duped into a situationship or relationship, situationship really, because it wasn't a relationship, but you were duped into it through manipulation, through lying, through love bombing, by, creating this image of what your life was going to be like. So what can we as a community, not just the Asian community, but as a general human community, what can we do to become safe spaces for women like Jayshree, or any of us that have actually been victims to coercive control? What can we do to be safe spaces for women, or even men, if they are in that situation, to come forward and speak about their experience without fear of victim blaming and repercussion? So let's go to you, Claire, first, and then Jayshree, I'll pose the same question to you as well.
I think in a nutshell, it's like with everything that's secret and shameful, we bring it into the light. We repeatedly bring, and I don't mean more street lighting, because that's a waste of electricity and not good for the planet, and it's not going to stop it happening. So we need to bring the subject into the light, and we need to hold people accountable. And which is what I do most of the day, all day, but you sort of start going up higher levels to positions of power, and people start squashing you back down. And so we've just got to keep repeating it and saying, this is still an issue. This is still a human rights breach. This is still an abomination for a country that is meant to be intelligent, civilized, and apparently developed. It doesn't really feel it when we look at this subject, especially.
No, well, I mean, that's just stick with domestic abuse, because I know, like, you and I have had a lot of conversations about this, and we both literally will sit there, head in hands, going, well, what can we do? So, Jayshree, from your perspective, as somebody who was a victim, as somebody who is a survivor, because yes, you were a victim through circumstances that were not of your own doing, but you've actually fought the system, and you're now using your experiences and your voice to actually help people to understand that if they are in that situation, it's not their fault. So what advice would you give to sort of like the public out there? What can we look out for our loved ones?
There are a few things that I'd like there to be. First of all, it's about changing mindsets. Men make culture, and then men integrate culture and tradition with religion. So it's an effort that's going to involve everyone for both genders to get involved with, because we live on a planet with men, and they are mostly the ones that make decisions and policies. So it has to start from there up there. And then the second thing is about education.
Yeah.
Because for me, especially in my native language, which is Creole, because I'm from Mauritius, these words doesn't exist. And then you go again further. It doesn't exist in Hindi. It doesn't exist in Gujarati or Punjabi. You know, all those different ethnic, it doesn't exist, because how can you then describe what you're going through, how you're suffering, how you're feeling ashamed for something that you've got no control over? You've got to get the correct wordings, which means educating women and knowing about their rights and about their dignity. And then from there, getting involved, you know, with agencies like Clare Consulting, you then get that education. And then if you want to go forward and report it, and then you go to the police, and then you report it as coercive control. So in order to go to that stage where you're going to sort of seek help from other service providers, you need to get the correct words and language to describe what you're going through. Otherwise, how are you going to expect people from my culture and other minority culture to come forward to access mental health services, service providers, and whoever, you know, just to get out of the situation? And the other important thing for me, which I'm going to empower women, is about talking to each other and breaking that cycle of fear and shame. Because in our culture, abuse and neglect are permitted, but talking about it is forbidden. So as women, when we connect with each other, we become stronger. And then we get the correct wordings. And the stage where I was, it's something that goes back several generations. So in a way, when you go to epigenetics, you already have those genes there that are activated. And then when you go through abuse, then you have mental and physical ailments. And these are things that they are not there for a season. It stays with you through life. And what I found really heartbreaking is that many women end up dying without knowing about this type of help that there is out there, just because of the fear and shame of what people will say, you know, and to try to protect the family name and all that. So education for me is what's important going forward.
And I completely understand, Claire, you know, about Jayshree, because, you know, Claire, I know sort of like you and Jayshree are in the process of talking about creating a conference that will allow, you know, to bring sort of like a wider education. But my question to this, and Jayshree, you know, what you've said in terms of education. Now, a lot of the time, do you think that a lot of the abuse is the mothers, the parents of the perpetrator are complicit in that abuse, even though they may not necessarily be abusing you, but they are complicit because they're turning a blind eye to what their son, their husband, their nephews are doing? So how do we change that mindset of a mother? Because that mother would be the first one to potentially speak up if her daughter was being in that situation of being abused. So the differentiation between, well, it's my daughter-in-law, my son is an angel, he hasn't done anything. How do we tackle that? Because this, like you said, it's embedded generationally. So how do we tackle that? Claire, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is more education and more permission, and more words to describe the experience. So It's the same, because the challenge is that, generally speaking, people will target the female family members to say, right, you're complicit in this, and you're not speaking out, so you need to do something. We don't challenge and have that conversation with the men. And so then that can put, although those women, they're abusive by proxy, but we can't just penalize them, because they're part of being oppressed in the patriarchy as well. So it needs to be a full conversation. We need faith leaders of all faiths to be saying these things as fact and as not acceptable. We need education in school, and we need to move away just from having such oppressive and assumptive society collectively that we all share. And it's got to be at, bottom up, top down, because it's not going to happen. And ultimately, we need to move away from forever looking at the violence framework of reference, because coercive control, and specifically when it comes to when we're in an honor-based situation, then people are looking for bruises, and there are plenty of health professionals that say, well, I can't see a bruise because the child's got dark skin or the female's got, and it's like, come on, 2021. So we need a little bit more honest and upfront, and we need education all the way through, but we need the legislation to change. Legislation's always a couple of 100 years too late. It takes another 500 years to come into practice, but we've got to start somewhere.
So tell us a little bit more, because I mean that and I completely agree with you, Claire. And Jayshree, we've got a few comments for you. So Claire said that, obviously going back to your original sort of like the first thing you said, she was talking about future faking and promises and love bombing, which is, again, what's happened to you. It's happened to quite a few, unfortunately, women who have been subjected to this level of coercive control. Shahina said, well said, Jayshree, and I feel that no one should wait for abuse to happen. It should be taught from early years at school, so the girls don't have to go through it before they reach freedom program. Why can't it be taught to every girl and man? We don't have to be an abuser or abused to learn about abuse, which is what you've just been saying, Claire. Bhavna's joined us saying, evening, ladies. Great topic. Thank you, Bhavna. And Tracy Chaplin has said, fantastic points, ladies. So you both, this topic is so huge. And I don't think that, we've been able to give it full justice within half an hour. I mean, we've just literally touched the tip of the iceberg, and we are getting literally to the end of the half hour. But very sort of like quickly, Claire and Jayshree, you're looking at creating, we touched on this a little while ago, a conference around the topic of coercive control. Jayshree, can you just tell us a little bit more about why and what it will entail?
My idea is about breaking the cycle of fear and shame, because this is what sort of retrain us, stop us from moving forward in life. And in today's world, we are in a world where there's mobile phones, social media, everything. So we can't still have that sort of thinking pre-modern times and not move with time as well. Those type of tradition and cultures, they may have been valid before the modern time, but we have to move with time. And it's high time that women are put on an equal sort of stage with men, because so many lives are being lost just because of coercive control and abuse.
No, absolutely. And sorry, Claire, I'm going to come to you in a minute, but we've just had a few more comments. So Claire says it's all part of a perpetrator's tactics to emotionally win their victim over and dupe them. And I think, Colette, you're right about that, because it's not just the coercive control between, like Jayshree said, husband and wife. There are lots of people who will do that. I mean, catfishers do that. Sort of like men who are hiding their real identities, their gay identities may do that. you know, there are so many stories that we could talk about. So Manjit Dixon has joined us. She says, totally agree with you, Claire. Everyone should be educated about what can be happening behind closed doors, more openness about this so it's not hidden. And Zara C has said, we fight and fight to teach our young people about the cycle of abuse and tactics, healthy relationships. Our voices are not being heard. We will keep speaking out. So Claire, can you just, again, sort of like going on from what Jayshree said, sort of like the ethos behind the, the conference, what is like your perspective from sort of like the consultancy perspective, and as somebody who is a safe space, what else can we expect from the conference?
I think one of the key aspects, because people are still learning and beginning to understand about coercive control. All those comments were brilliant. I totally agree with them about the education and what we need to do. Absolutely. But the alignment, and this is kind of, in my point of view, this is another aspect of being trapped in a culture as well as a patriarchy, is the fact that we'll talk about coercive control over here, and we'll talk about honor-based abuse over here. And we need to bring them into the room together, because they are very much together. And then along with that is going to be highlighting and drawing out all of the different health impacts, some of which Jayshree touched on when she was speaking, so that we can get professionals in the room on the topic to be looking out for and understanding, because we're, you know, as a victim, we get medicated for stuff that's never going to fix it, because actually it's what I'm living with at home that is the issue. So, and there are those life-limiting and lifelong illnesses that come from that. So the conference will bring information and advice for professionals, but also those of us that have sort of walked through the valley of flames, so to speak, in whatever capacity that has been. So it's going to be a national conference. It'll be next year. We're going to have a big focus on health, because it's the quiet one in the room that everyone just doesn't really connect to.
Mental health as well.
Yeah. Which, and that's what I was saying. So it's like literally it's incorporating the whole thing. It's actually taking everyone from beginning to end and the journey through the whole process from the perspective of, I'm assuming, the victim, rather than, because I know we've had, you know, we've spoken to a few other people that work within this arena, and they talk about how the perpetrator needs help, which obviously they do, because you literally cannot be within your right mind if you feel it's okay to destroy another human. That there has to be something seriously that needs sorting within your mind if harming others is the first thing that you do. But yeah, no, we really look forward to that conference. I mean, I just, like I said, I'd love to get you guys back on, you know, in like a few months, just talk about where we are with the conference, what we're doing, because I think we literally have only just touched the tip of the iceberg, Jayshree, and, you know, and Claire. And Jayshree, thank you so much for sharing part of your story, because we haven't actually touched on sort of like how you got through it and what steps you took. I mean, you said that you'd spoken to Claire, but I think let's extend this by another 5 or 10 minutes. I think this is too important a topic to just cut at half an hour. When did you realize you needed help, and how did you approach the actual, I suppose, getting yourself freed from the attachment?
First of all, I kept going to the doctors. I was suffering from neck pain, back pain, and unfortunately, there was a white male doctor. For 2 years, he gave me all sorts of exercise. He would even get me on his carpet in his office to do all types of exercises for stretching. And it took another South Asian lady doctor to really sat me down. And it was in that period for Christmas 2015. She sat me down and started saying, "What's happening to you? What has happened to you?" So I started telling her how I was being controlled and abused, and how my ex-husband was using money restriction and psychological and emotional abuse to keep me contained. And then she said to me, "Are you going through domestic abuse?" And I said, no, I know what domestic abuse is. It's when you're getting beaten up. That's domestic abuse. And then she said, no, you are going through domestic abuse. And I sort of argued with her, and she wanted to put me on antidepressant like amitriptyline because I wasn't sleeping. I was in that constant state of uncertainty because I found out after 3 years of gathering evidence that he's been grooming young boys from Ghana and Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
And he's been sending them £100 every week. And for me, it was every single thing had to be accounted for. So if I wanted to have like Indian vegetables, he'll just give me £20, and then he'll go through their shopping list in case I've bought anything from me. And that sort of thing continued. And when it was happening, I wasn't aware. It's as if I've lived my life like backwards. Like I would find out what happened to me 3 years ago. And it was only through the information I gathered from his email chats and on his iPad that I understood what has been going on behind my back. Because had it not been for those information, because he would be chatting to so many guys that he would even forget himself which guy, which country he's talking from. So he would email himself the WhatsApp chat of what's been said and what's been discussed from the different guys he was trying to groom. And then I talked to Claire, and then the very first day I went to her workshop, it was like, when you've been in darkness. And that's the other thing, because spiritually I explored everything that could be explored spiritually. I went even back into like past lives, meditation, you name it, I've done it. And spiritually I've got everything. But then what was happening to me, I didn't know how to deal the pain, the mental, emotional, physical pain I was with. I didn't know how to describe it. And when I went to Clare, there's not many people like Clare that welcome, that warmth, that at least someone is getting you. She knows exactly what you're going through. You don't get it from any service providers, because I've been through so many providers who's let me down. And it's not Clare who had my back. I was made homeless. She had my back. I went to my supposedly best friend in London to stay with her while trying to sort out my situation. She kicked me out. Claire came to see me in London. And it's always Claire. I attended Claire's freedom program, and then I got the language, and then I could express myself. And then it was like layers and layers of pain that's been there for years, because it was like 11 years of marriage. All those layers of pain, it was like an onion being peeled off. Just when you think, oh, that is it. And no, it wasn't that. But below that emotion, there were so many feelings. And then it came to a situation when Claire said I needed to report it to the police. But unfortunately, Leicestershire police let me down. And I went through 10 white policemen, and they closed my how would I say, my statement without investigating any third parties involved about, which is Ueva, Claire Walker, and my GP. And I even had a policeman coming up to me saying that, well, there is some element of abuse, but you wouldn't really want to ruin your husband's life just because of these few elements of abuse. And I felt as if I was like, I was sort of picked up from the street and then discarded like trash. And that decision that came with the police, And Claire kept encouraging me, you need to report it. And the policeman said, no, that's not domestic abuse. You need to contact some other organization. I was being like a ping pong with the service providers. And then I was an advisor at a charitable organization where I was an advisor. I reached out to my manager. She knew for the past 2 years what I've been going through, but she never told me that in Hinckley and Bosworth Council, there was a domestic abuse officer that was there. I wasn't aware. And I went to Citizen Advice to seek for help, and I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know because I was kept isolated and I didn't know how to express myself. But then that was before I went to Clare. And then I understood what happened to me. Then I started writing down. Then all the service users that was involved let me down. My solicitor dumped me. I had to represent myself in court, and he came accompanied by his senior barrister and solicitor. And I lost out on every level. And then I ended up in a refuge for about 6 months. And that was another learning curve for me, because I then started going to food bank at the refuge, interacting with people. I was racially abused as well. Mm. So it was like one thing after the other. And that told then what it did to my mental health and my physical health. I've got like a shopping list. I suffer from depression, insomnia, CPTSD, cervical lumbalgitis. I got thyroid problem, endometriosis, myofascial pain, TMJ, which is bruxism, carpal tunnel, and to term it all, fibromyalgia. Gosh. And all these, and I'm still going through pain. I live with pain and battle with exhaustion daily. Mm. For me, it's about getting it like a couple of hours. For me to be like this in front of you today, I've had to rest for 3 days. Yeah. And sleeping during the day in order to be like this in front to express myself. Because no matter what, whenever you talk about the past, it comes back to you. It's as if you're right there, And being sort of let down by the service users and then trying to sort my health was my next priority, trying to understand what's been going on. And then, when I said about spiritually, I explored everything. And then I accessed, like last year, mental health services from Glenville Recovery College. And that was another sort of level that I have to access for my healing. Then I understood the impact of hormones, depression, anxiety, and how it affects your mood. Because when you're depressed, you're not lazy. Because I was getting labeled about being lazy, about using what happened to me as an excuse not to move forward in life. No. So as I was battling that, I was getting bashed about by friends, meaningful, who has their best interests, family members. They are all battering me. And I'm trying to get that word, mentally, I was broken. Yeah. And you have to rebuild from that. And thanks to Recovery College and then LPT, like there's this program amazing called Chime, I understood what has happened to me, what was happening, how to deal with my pain, and how to make self-care my priority, and then how to put boundaries into place. Because you are like a people pleaser. To come to this stage, you were like a people pleaser. I didn't know, because the way we've been brought up, it's always to anticipate other people's needs. You're always the last one. It's always other people. You have to micromanage everything. Yeah. And then once I asked Claire a question, I said, how long did it take you to feel sort of normal? And then she told me it took her 5 years. And in fact, I'm here today and it's been 5 years. So Claire was important. That's the earliest you can be, to have some degree of not surviving, but living on my terms. Because I've been surviving for a very long time, but now I'm living with purpose and meaning. And my mission is to empower women. You know, all those women who don't have voices, all those migrant women who come into this country where you're being bashed about. But I am a product. This is what I want to share, because I'm a product of my heritage. I'm a sum of experiences what my ancestors, grandparents, and my parents went through. They were victims of other victims. I'm the product of colonialism, immigration, racism, patriarchal society with culture and tradition dating back thousands of years, domestic abuse, violence, coercive control, and epigenetic. So with epigenetic, you already inherit certain genes prone to illnesses. And then all of that, when you try to make sense where you are in life, before I accessed mental health services last year, I had no hope. I was not looking forward to anything. It's as if the word joy, happiness, been wiped out of my life. And then when I started doing Chime, which was about being connected, hope, identity, meaning, and empowerment, that sort of gave me some type of meaning to sort of go on living. And I have to thank Chime, the facilitators, Recovery College, for helping me that bit, for giving me my life back. And I'm not positive. I hate that word, because there's a toxicity related to positive, that you have to make goals and go forward in life. No. I take one day at a time and I do my best. Because being positive and that fake positive, that's what I've lived my life on. I was in an abusive situation, but trying to be positive, doing prayers, everything, but nothing changed. And this is why this year, when certain people have heard my story and then they decided to go forward, because it's high time we're really doing something about it, because we've had laws, talks, nothing's been done concretely. How many people are being brought to court for coercive control? And then people of my culture, that's another story, because then you deal with racism from the police and all the organizations linked to you. So, yes, for me, Claire is my guardian angel. She's my light, because if she didn't have my back, I wouldn't be here. And my mom, my sister, they've been there for me and gave me that will to live.
And that makes such a huge difference. Claire, you were sort of going to be saying something. So you're on mute at the moment, so you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, it's been quite a journey, hasn't it, Jayshree? But
yes,
I just wanted to say, because you said you made reference to the different inputs that had given you your life back. They gave you the tools for you to take your life back. Yes. And I think that is one of the things that you forgot to mention is the amazingness and incredibleness of strength and resilience that victims and survivors have, and you've just sort of, you know, squeezed a lifetime of trauma and learning in like 20 minutes. But essentially, you know, that's why I do. I know that if I give people the tools, that they can go and forth and reclaim their lives. And that's what you have done throughout, with all of the agencies and individuals that have been positive for you. But it's still a battle. Every day is a battle, but you're a joy.
Thank you.
Well, you both, I mean, Jayshree, thank you so much for your openness and honesty in sharing, you know, what you've gone through. I won't say story because you've lived it. It's not a story, it's real life. It's happened. And you've shared it with such bravery. And I agree with you. I don't buy into the whole positive mindset. I buy into the strong, resilient mindset, that I'm a survivor mindset. And yes, I can be broken, but you know what? I will rise again. And Claire, I think, you know, one of the things that I really admire about you is that you are a true safe space for so many people who have gone through or are going through what Jayshree has gone through, or other domestic abuse survivors have gone through. And you provide a safe space, no judgment, no, well, why didn't you see it coming? Why didn't you speak up earlier? And I can attest to what Jayshree said, because there are people out there who are, I don't know, healers and coaches, etc., who work through judgment and not through safe space, because immediately it's a, well, why didn't you see that happening? Why did you wait so long before you left? We need to remove all of that and allow people who have been through what Jayshree has gone through to be open and speak up without feeling further penalised for having been put through hell in the first place.
And the other thing I wanted to add is that the shame was never mine to carry. I'm putting the shame right back at those person who's abused me and used me. And this is why my message is about breaking the cycle of fear and shame. Because we live in fear of what people will say. Oh, people going to laugh at you, people going to make, especially in our culture. And I said, no, I'm not going to put up with that. I'm making my mistake now. No, I'm not ashamed of what I've been through, and I'm going to tell my story, because the shame was never mine to carry.
Absolutely.
And you know what, honestly, Jayshree, true inspiration, such courage, such strength, and thank you so much for speaking up, because it's because of people like yourself and Claire, you as well, you know, but women like you both, that allows other women to come forward and speak up. Because when one woman stands up to speak up for her rights, it then creates a ripple effect, allowing other women to speak up. So honestly, thank you both so much. And please do keep us updated on the conference, because, you know, I think it's something that we all need to be made aware of, and we all need to be a part of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it'd be a pleasure.
Definitely. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. And I think the final thing I'm going to we've had so many comments, and I will ask you guys just to read through them yourself when we finish, and, you know, please do respond to them. But Manjit, you know, sums it up. And I think what you've just said, the shame wasn't mine to carry. She's saying, what powerful words. Jayshree, go on living each day as it comes. And, you know, again, thank you both so much. I literally have got goosebumps after today's show. It's been, you know, it's a hard-hitting show, and I think those of you that are watching it back from, you know, going forwards from today, you know, watch it, understand it, and share it, because these are topics. The reason I created the double 15 minutes initially was to bring some positivity into a world that had gone a bit doolally. But actually, as time has gone on, the double 15 minutes has actually developed into a platform to bring forward issues that really need to be raised, and to actually allow a platform for voices that need to be heard So Jayshree and Claire, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules, to be on the show, to talk about your experiences, and to talk about how we as a collective can actually support each other.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the space and for your input, Jayshree. You're an absolute amazing human. And a privilege to say I know you. You're my friend.
And it's my privilege to say I know the both of you. So thank you both so much. You guys have been amazing. So on that note, I'm just going to say thank you to both Claire and Jayshree for joining me today. Yes, the double 15 minutes has turned into quadruple 15 minutes, but it was just too important a topic to condense into half an hour. We will continue this conversation, so do watch the space. Now, Claire and Jayshree, if people want to connect with you, to talk to you further, can you just let people know how they can actually contact you? So Claire, do you want to let people know?
Yep, on Instagram or Facebook, it's Clare Walker Consultancy. On LinkedIn or Twitter, it's Clare Walker Consulting. But you can get me on any of those platforms, and please do feel free to.
Okay, perfect. And Jayshree, what about yourself? If people want to reach out to you?
I am on Facebook as Jayshree Adnath. I am on LinkedIn as Jayshree Adnath, and I'm on Twitter as Jayshree Adnath, and I'm on Instagram as Jayshree. So feel free to contact me, and hopefully I can then signpost them to the proper person for help.
Amazing. You both are absolutely super inspirational women, and I am just so privileged to be able to call you friends, and for you guys to join this platform to share your knowledge and experience. So thank you both so much. I'm just absolutely blown away by both of you. And to those watching, please do connect with Jayshree and Claire on their social media platforms, and do look out for the conference, because I think it's something that we all need to really up our education on. Are there any last words that either of you would like to say? So Claire, let's start with you. Any last words you'd like to say?
Just lots of thank yous, and you've said all the rest. Really keep a lookout on our social media posts. When it's really picking up speed and dates are in, we'll be putting them on there. And thank you to you, Rupa, for battling through with your germs. You've been a serious process.
It's being back in the public now with my contracts I'm doing with the NHS. So do you know what, I'm glad in one way, because it just means I'm out and about. So this will be my one and only cold for the next year, which is fine. And Jayshree, what about any last words from you?
I'm here to empower women, and I want to invite all those new women to join me in breaking the cycle of fear and shame. And remember, the shame is not ours to carry. That's my message. So in order to connect with yourself, you are important. You do matter, despite what other people might say. And yeah, I hope to be a beacon of light for those women there lost and seeking help.
I'm sure
that's my message.
I'm absolutely sure you will, especially, sort of like the fact that you are getting this message out. So thank you both. And I just want to say thank you to everybody that joined us this evening. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for watching from all three platforms. Please do share this evening's show with your social media connections, because the more people we can reach with this subject area, the more we can educate. So please do join us in sharing the post, sharing the show, and sharing information. Now, a little bit about next week's show before we say goodbye to everybody. So not next week, sorry, the 1st of November. I have a guest. Now, imagine being accused and incarcerated for 16 years for a rape and murder that you didn't commit. So my next guest on the 1st of November actually lived that nightmare. Jayshree Adnath was arrested, accused, tried, and found guilty for a rape and murder that he didn't commit. He was then exonerated 16 years later through new DNA evidence. So join me on the 1st of November when I'll be talking to Jayshree about his whole experience and what he has actually done, and the way he's managed to pivot from a seemingly very negative situation into how he has created a more positive outcome for himself and others like him. So again, Claire and Jayshree, thank you both so much. You've been amazing. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you on the 1st of November. See you soon. Bye.